Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to talk about why tabletop role-playing games absolutely crush video games as a hobby. Okay, so in order to explain why tabletop role-playing games absolutely crush video games as a hobby, I can do that with all the information packed into, unpacked from two characters, 6B, all right? So let's get into it. It is books versus buttons, buddies versus buttons, and build versus buttons. Okay, so let's talk about books versus buttons, all right? If you get, and I have to define, let's define our terms before we go further, okay? Tabletop role-playing game, actual physical book, okay? Or maybe up to 3 physical books, right? And actually also, so it is a core rule book with, or a set of 3 core, if that's what your tabletop role-playing game needs, 3 books as your core rule book, that's okay too. All right. And so physical books, physical table, physical friends sitting in the same room playing that same tabletop role-playing game together. All right. Now, wait, what about online tabletop role-playing games? That is a video game. The primary element is video. So, I know a lot of people are going to like that, but I really don't believe that online tabletop role-playing games are actually tabletop role-playing games. They are online tabletop role-playing games, which in my opinion constitutes them as video games. And that's a very broad topic, but I actually think the video being on and knowing that you're streaming and having people talk in the middle of your game, or even if you just record it and put it up and then have people commenting on that game, that is video. That is a major video component, and you are now playing it's a game. Your major component is video. You're playing a video game. So when I say tabletop role-playing game, I mean real books, real table, real people, okay? What is a video game? A video game would be any, the whole 9. PC games, console games, portable gaming systems, okay? Mobile games, all of it, okay? All right. Now, I also want to be honest about my own history. All right, so I believe this, what I'm about to tell you, I believe it wholeheartedly, right? And when I was in my early 20s, I did spend quite a bit of time. I spent about 20 to 30 hours a week video gaming. I spent that time on Tony Hawk, Street Skater. I spent that time on Diablo. I spent that time on StarCraft. And games similar to those genres, right? And when I really, thought about it, I'm like, well, I get this from playing a tabletop role-playing game, and I get this from playing a video game. Over the years, I have excised everything out of my life. I no longer play any console games. I no longer play any PC games, and I do not own a mobile gaming system. A mobile gaming system. I do play Hearthstone on my cell phone. Now, why is that, right? It's several reasons. One, I'm weak, and I have not been able to excise that last bit of video gaming out of my life. I would like to do that. I haven't reached that point. I'm not strong enough yet. And the reason why is I really feel that Hearthstone has been incredibly responsible as far as being a video game. They have this thing where it's quests each day, and if you play 2 or 3 games a day, which is about 20 minutes a day, 30 max, you get gold for that, and then they're like, you're done. You don't get any more gold today. You should probably go do something else. And I just think that's so responsible, and the game is absolutely free. I've never spent a single dime on it, and it's absolutely amazing, and it's maintained, and you play against real people, and blah, 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 right? But I did want to be honest that I have not been able to excise all video games out of my life yet, but I am working toward that. I'm doing this today for 2 reasons. One, to convince people that TRPGs are a way better hobby than video game, and to convert people. I really want, I think there's a lot of really bright, creative people pouring a lot of time and energy into video games, and I really want them on the TRPG side, so that our community is stronger, and so that's the reason I'm doing this today. All right, let's get into it. Books versus buttons, okay? If you play a tabletop role-playing game, you are going to read, at minimum, a 300-page player's handbook, most likely. And if you are a game master, you are going to read 750 to 900 pages of content, okay? That is a ton of reading, right? And you're going to have to remember, you're going to have to learn it, right? And so that's literacy. That is just pure literacy, right? And you're gonna have to look up a lot of terms, you're gonna have to do a lot of math, you're gonna have to strain yourself, right? Because the people writing these games are generally smarter than you. They're generally smarter than me. And, you know, and in order to build tabletop role-playing games, some of the smartest people in the world do it, right? And actually, it's a really cool mix, too. It's super, people who are super literate, super smart, and super creative, okay? Now, let's talk about video games. Buttons, 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 right? When I look at video games, increasingly, words are being replaced by icons. And so the trend in video games is read less, read less, read less, read less. Okay? Now there's certainly exceptions, right? But for tabletop role-playing games, it's always books. That's the heart of the game. It's the heart of the game, of the tabletop role-playing game industry. And in my opinion, that, you know, books versus buttons, hands down, you will walk away with more literacy, you will walk away with more vocabulary, you will walk away with more understanding playing tabletop role-playing games than you ever will investing the same amount of time in video games. Okay, buddies versus buttons, right? Tabletop role-playing games. Here's my buddy, and, you know, and we're all sitting around the table, and Sally's there, and Bob's there, and Patricia's there, and Dennis is there, and everybody's playing a game together. And if, you know, if Dennis is sick that week, you know, you can see that, and you can call him later in the week and say, "Hey, buddy, how are you doing? I see that you're sick," right? And you can help him if he needs help, you know, all those kind of things. Or, you know, just like, it's just better because you actually see that person. You can talk to them about their pets, and there's real relationships and real friendships are grown through tabletop role-playing games. Whereas video games increasingly, right? I do have 4 kids who all play video games, and the reason why is I'm not a cruel parent. They all want to play those games, right? So, you know, we put logical boundaries around them, and we allow them to play video games. But increasingly, finding a game that can be played where 2 people sit on the couch and play that game together, that is increasingly rare, and those games are increasingly less resources are spent on them, and it's bad. It's not a good situation at all. And so, you know, so that can be really challenging for a lot of people. So, you know, and I'm 100% aware that guilds are there, right? But my experience with guilds is that many games do not have proper boundaries around them, and guilds often pressure players to play an hour, 2 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours a day. I've definitely seen that from guilds, and we definitely have the same thing in tabletop role-playing games where there are long games, a 4-hour block, right? And there are some people who do tabletop role-playing games all day. But generally, you'll see that on a weekend, right? It's very rare to see people playing 3, 4, 5, 6 nights a week or days a week on tabletop role-playing games. So I feel there's just a lot better boundaries from the community itself on how time is spent. And also, so buddies, real people who you really know, who you can really shake hands with and give a real smile to. And also, I think those friendships that are there, also because you're face to face, there's a level of civility that comes with tabletop role-playing games that I do not see in many modern video game communities, right? Also, from a perspective of people, okay, I feel that the tabletop role-playing game community, we've had some problems in our past as far as the content in our books, how inclusive they were, all those kind of things, right? If you look at tabletop role-playing games right now, there is a major trend to clean it up, to make it inclusive, to make sure that, you know, all different types of people can play and be included. Video games are, in my opinion, not there yet. And so they're in the same journey. And in my opinion, because of that, we're at the table together. The communities for tabletop role-playing games, they don't have that anonymity issue. They don't have that physical distance issue. And those communities treat people like people more often than video game communities treat each other like human beings. And And I think it's just a more rich and robust community under tabletop role-playing games, okay? All right, build versus buttons, okay? If you play tabletop role-playing games, you will build a character, okay? And you are going to need to determine what weapons they use. You're going to have to determine what spells they use. You're going to have to determine who their companion is. You're going to have to determine a whole lot of things and make all those things work and fit, right? And it can be and that is at the player level. When you are a player, if you become engaged and you learn how to build a character, right, and fit that character into the ramifications, into the sections of the game, and then fit them into a team, often you will be inspired to become a game master. Even if you do not become a game master, you are going to see a game master every single week. That game master, that is where build happens. Game masters build worlds. They build religions. They build economy systems. They build monsters. They build people. They build a whole world for their players to live in, right? And I will tell you right now, that is the killer part of tabletop role-playing games, and that is why they will crush video games every time in the head-to-head fight for best hobby, right? It cannot be beat. And what tabletop role-playing games taught me to build was how to build strong relationships with people. That started with treating the players who I was next to with respect. That started, then that transformed into me treating the players who were, who I was game mastering for with respect. And so that we could have a cohesive game, right? Whereas many video games do not put structure around that. We really don't have a strong feeling of how people interact together, whereas interacting together and being cohesive is absolutely crucial in most tabletop role-playing games, and there's a lot of mechanics that encourage cohesive teams, right? And so it taught me to build strong relationships. It taught me to, and then the biggest thing is, it taught me that once I realized I could build worlds, I was like, well, I can build a family, and I can build a career, and I can build a family, right? And it really was in that order. And once I realized, I've created worlds, I can build amazing things here in this world too. It gave me incredible confidence. And I do not think there is a video game in the world that will inspire a player who has been spoon-fed all of the content in that game, right? They didn't build that thing. They don't really, build the way you do in a tabletop role-playing game. When you bring a tabletop role-playing game, you build at every step, whereas the interactivity on a video game is just far less, right? And so the build part is incredibly important. It really instills a confidence in a person that just cannot be replaced. That is absolutely critical to successful gaming, and it's really a big deal. And so the six B's. Books versus buttons, buddies versus buttons, build versus buttons. If you are out there and you are playing PC games, Steam game, PC games, console games, mobile games, if you are playing 5 to 10 hours a week, God bless you. You probably have time to do other things. No worries. Go in peace, right? If you're playing 15, 20, 30 hours a week, we need you over on this side, and I truly believe tabletop role-playing games can transform your life. Whereas I also think video games can transform your life, and there are very few people telling you that they can transform it for the better. I really just don't think that, immense amount of times being, even if you're playing 5-10 hours a week, you're still going to get things out of that. Even if you're a 10-hour player, I still would love you to come over, a 5 or 10-hour player, I would still love you to come over to our side. The reality is, if you're spending time on video games, any significant amount of time, you're really going to be better off investing that time in in tabletop role-playing games. Wish me luck on getting rid of my my Hearthstone playing, and thank you very much for watching this video. Take care.